Well, good evening to our last lecture of our series of lectures today. In it, we're going to be dealing on the importance of controlling your thoughts. Just to remind you, I have a Twitter account that is quite active, and so does this YouTube page. Most of them are in Spanish, but remember there's some that are in English. And also, remember that in Castilos, this program, there's going to be an interview there, and whenever it comes out, make sure that you call the station and thank them for thinking about depression here in Iceland. That would be something very nice that you can do. But today's topic is extremely important. How thinking can literally change the chemistry of the brain. And we're going to be learning about the basics of cognitive behavioral therapy. And emotional intelligence is something that we have been studying lately, and emotional intelligence actually increases as the person applies these principles. And emotional intelligence is important because it's going to depend on your emotional intelligence how successful you're going to be in life. See, there are some people, and I'm sure you could pinpoint this, that you had as friends in high school. Yes. It's interesting, it's not working the translation. Maybe it's off. So, okay, works? Very good. So, there are some people that you had as friends in high school. And these people were really smart. And I'm sure you can count a few of them. Yet, as you look today, what did they do with their life? They didn't do much with their lives. You know what I'm talking about? Very smart, intelligent people. Yet, they did not accomplish much in life, and that is directly related to emotional intelligence. Because your IQ will determine your first job. And your EQ, your emotional intelligence, that will determine how much in that job you are going to ascend. And the good news about emotional intelligence is that it can be learned. And I'm glad that you guys are here this evening, because that's exactly what you're going to be doing. You're going to be learning how to improve that emotional intelligence. And it is important to understand emotional intelligence. It basically has 5 important components. Number 1 is to know yourself by knowing your own emotions. There are times that your mood may not be the best, and you in your wisdom, you're going to understand that there's certain situations, there's certain people that you should not be talking to at this moment, because you are very vulnerable. Also, it has to do with managing your emotions instead of your emotions managing you. You have control on what emotions you have. And also, it's important that you understand what type of emotions others have, so that you don't get in trouble. And again, there are certain times in which a person may be angry or may not be in the right state. And if you are emotionally intelligent, you will know better how to handle this type of situations. And also, it has to do with managing and cultivating emotions. And this is one of the issues with somebody that has a low emotional intelligence. They may be very wise, yet they don't have the ability to communicate or to interact with others well. It is that type of person person, and I'm sure you could pinpoint a few of them, that it doesn't matter which setting he is at, with his family, at work, they're always causing trouble. Do you know this type of person? Those people have very low emotional intelligence. And finally, a very important component for emotional intelligence, and that has to do with the motivation side of things. You may have the hardware, you may be extremely intelligent, yet if you don't have that motivation to go and reach those goals, you're not going to accomplish more. And there are many advantages of having and cultivating your emotional intelligence. Among those advantages are the fact that you're going to be able to think more clearly in order to take the best decisions. Also, your ability to communicate your ideas and to influence others is going to increase. And also something important is that emotionally intelligent people do not create dissension and separation among groups. Rather, the group feels more close as a result of that. And you can actually pinpoint certain leaders how in the way that they lead, they create separation instead of creating unity in the group setting. And it's important to understand that this has to do directly with emotional intelligence. And also, because this type of emotional intelligence creates unity, that type of person is going to avoid expressing polarizing statements, things that create dissension. And even the way that you say things can either help harvest more unity or create disunity. Also, people with emotional intelligence, therefore, are more happy because they're able to interact much better with others. And you know, the most important thing is that these people do that without having to sacrifice its principles or truth. Many times, erroneously, we may think that we have to come down and down and down in order to click with others. But you know, you always need to keep your standards. And that's what makes people successful. So don't forget that. And there are a few things that affect this emotional intelligence. There is a small factor among your inheritance. And this is important to understand that it's not the only factor. It's one of those factors, but it's not the only one. Also has to do with what type of experience you had when you were a child. Because if there are certain traumatic events, if there was lack of love and support in that family, that can have a negative influence on the development of the emotional intelligence. And also has to do with your current emotional support. It is important to have that balance, because if not, that secondarily affects your emotions and your emotional intelligence. Now let me ask you this question. When is easier for you to get into an argument? When you slept really well, or when there's lack of sleep at the moment? When is easier to get into an argument? When you're not sleeping good, when you are hungry, when you are sick, it is of higher probability that you're going to get into trouble with others. And that has to do because physical conditions actually lower emotional intelligence. But you know, from all these factors that we have talked, there is one that is even more important regarding emotional intelligence. And that has to do by the fact that our emotions are controlled by our beliefs. And I'm going to come back to that. Our emotions are controlled by our fundamental beliefs. And also, our emotions have to do with the way that we evaluate things that are happening around us. See, two people can see exactly the same things. They're next to each other, yet their reactions can be huge and different. Why is that? Because emotional intelligence varies from person to person. And also, the way that we are thinking about our problems also affects our level of emotional intelligence. And especially, and more importantly, something that psychologists call the self-talk. What do I refer myself to self-talk? Any idea? That has to do with your thoughts. In fact, right now, as I'm speaking, you yourself are having certain thoughts. Maybe right now you are in Spain instead of Iceland, in your thoughts. Because you choose what type of self-talk you have with yourself. And your feelings result as a result of those messages that you are sending to yourself. And your thoughts have much more to do with how you feel than what is actually happening in your life. And this has happened many times in history. There's an interesting story in the scriptures. It talks about a man that was doing his job, and suddenly he is accused falsely. They go and they whip this person so hard that he started bleeding on his back. Not only that, they got this person and they threw him into a prison that was dirty and was smelly, and it was a horrible place to be. Yet the person says that he was crying uncontrollably. Well, if you know the story, you know that that's not the way it ended. That person actually was singing praises. How could somebody that goes through such a torture can be a happy person? You know why? Because of the emotional intelligence. Your ability to manage your emotions based on your thoughts. So the reality is that what we are thinking in reality affects who we are. Whatever the way that you think is the way that you are going to act. And many people feel unfulfilled because they think that they're not smart enough, that they're not successful enough, that they're not attractive enough, that they're not talented enough to be happy and fulfilled. And the problem with this type of thinking is that we think that our negative emotions are the fault of somebody else instead of taking responsibility for our own thoughts. And yes, there's certain truth in this. Bad things happen to each one of us. But we can choose how we're going to react to those thoughts and those feelings that come to us. And the problem of thinking like this is that these thoughts makes us feel that we are just victims and that we cannot do absolutely nothing because these things are beyond our control. But you can change the way you think about things, and you can also, and this is the key foundation of cognitive behavioral therapy, you can change your basic beliefs and your basic values. that is completely possible. And you know, when you do that, you're going to see how your productivity, your mood, your outlook, everything will change for good. And there are research that show that negative thoughts can cause emotional turmoil. And those negative thoughts, they always contain very big distortions. And tonight we're going to explore some of those distortions because it's important for you to identify those types of distortions so that you can make the changes that are needed. And many times those thoughts appear valid in the surface, but you're going to learn tonight that those thoughts many times are irrational or they are wrong, and that type of wrong thinking is a very important source of suffering. So, what is it that makes you sad or glad or happy? What determines this type of emotions? Well, welcome to the ABC of cognitive behavioral people. Some people believe that there is an activated event, and you know, every day we meet with activated events. The food that we're cooking burns. And you know, today, the police stops us and gives us a ticket. And you know, we're going to our job, and then a tire flattens out, and then we cannot get in time to our job. Activating events are constantly happening to us. Now, does that automatically gives us an emotional consequence? Actually, this is not true. What happened to you will not determine directly what is going to be your emotional consequence. In fact, this is what we call crooked thinking. It is a wrong way of thinking erroneously. This is also called activated event to consequence mentality, and that is a wrong way of thinking. And then, in that way, we believe that we cannot have any ability to change the emotional consequence. And that's why tonight we're going to learn that this is a wrong way of thinking. Let me clarify how your brain actually works. Your brain actually works this way. You have an activated event, and see, between the emotional consequence and the activated event, you have something that is called the belief. The belief is actually what will determine the emotional consequence. Let me give you a simple example. Imagine that you believe that nobody should call you on your phone after 10 p.m. That's your belief. What happens if somebody calls after 10? Are you going to be really happy? See, it's wrong belief. Wrong belief will give you wrong emotional consequence. Therefore, it is very important for you to be aware of this in order to change the fundamental beliefs, in order to change the emotional consequences. So, let's go ahead and deal with some of the most common cognitive distortions. By the way, cognitive is only an exotic word for thought. Okay? So when I say cognitive distortions, it means distortions in the thoughts. There is a wrong way of thinking. And as we go through life and we experience different things, in many instances, we end up having wrong thought patterns. And we get used to thinking like this. So tonight I want you to try to identify as many of these possible cognitive distortions and to make the changes needed in order to deal with them. So first one is called the all or nothing thinking. In this one, you think that things are black or white. There's nothing in between. For example, somebody that is a good student and it's all the time getting the best scores. I don't know which system you use here, the A's or the 10, or the 10, the number or the letter? The 10, okay. Okay, suppose you somebody that always gets a 10 on school. And one time they get a 7. And they say, I am the worst student that ever happened here. Even though the person always is getting a 10. So that's the all or nothing thing. Let's see a few more examples. My friend doesn't agree with me. That's why he is completely non-supportive. Is that true? See, cognitive distortion. There's also an example with Jacob and Esau. He tried to sell his birthright using a plate of food. He was so hungry that he committed the all or nothing cognitive distortion. He said, I am so hungry that I'm going to die. You think he was going to die? See, all or nothing thinking. And he ended up making some decisions that later in life he ended up regretting. What about this statement? A person is either ugly or beautiful. Is that true? You know, I can tell you, even the most beautiful model has some ugliness in her. Yes or no? And even the most ugly person has some beauty in him. So never say this type of statements. These are wrong statements. This is all or nothing thing. What about this one? A person is either dumb or intelligent. Is that true? Again, the person may not know certain things, but may be able to know other things that I may not even know. So that is all or nothing thing. What about this one? Either you trust someone or you don't. What is that? All or nothing thinking. Same things either in black or in white. What about this one? That was a waste of time. Really? If you would have planned a little bit ahead, you could have done something productive while you were waiting. So the fact that you wasted your time has to do more with the way that you were planning. What about this one? It is completely ruined. Are you aware that even when you crash a car and the car is severely damaged and the insurance company says this car cannot be repaired, it's ruined, they still make some money out of it? They're going to get that car and maybe get some parts out of them and sell them, and they're going to get that metal and recycle it, and they're going to get some money out of it. So beware of all or nothing thinking. And this one is a setup for disaster. She is perfect. Once reality comes into place, you know, this is going to have severe negative consequences. So somebody that commonly is having this all or nothing thinking is going to have some negative consequences, such as self-worth, because it's either all valuable or useless. Also, this type of person will encourage behavior of procrastination. Why do it if it's no good at all? It also interferes with your future lives, and it also inflates the reality of the problem. leads to frustration, pessimism, discouragement, and even suicide thoughts. So beware of that. Then we have the cognitive distortion of overgeneralization. In this one, the person thinks that one event that has happened in their lives is going to repeat over and over and over and over and over. Usually, this cognitive distortion tends to occur on people that are very intelligent. If you ever taken an intelligence test, you have these patterns that you have to figure out where the pattern is going to. You know what I'm talking about? So, someone highly intelligent is good about putting patterns together. Yet, in these ones, they err because it is too few examples. And they end up having trouble about that. So, an example of overgeneralization would be somebody that is in college and is looking at a girl for many days. And finally, he tells his friends at the dorm, you know, today I'm going to ask this girl if she wants to come out with me. So the friends think, well, he has a good possibility, you know, I think that they may be a good match. And then later in the day, this person arrives completely discouraged and with an extremely sad face. So her friend says, what did she tell you? You know that you're acting like this. And this guy says, you know, I'm destined to be lonely and single for the rest of my life. Overgeneralization, isn't it? What did she say? She said that she had something to do today and that she couldn't come with me. Do you see the overgeneralization? There's actually two of them. Overgeneralization number one, he thinks that every time he goes and asks her, she is going to say no. Do you see the problem there? He doesn't know the future. And overgeneralization number two, he is claiming that every single girl on planet Earth has the same taste as this particular girl. Again, overgeneralizing. Just from a few examples, you go and make too many examples. So watch out for words, and this is the key when you're trying to identify this type of thought, for the words always and never. Then we have something that is called the mental filter. In this particular cognitive distortion, you see things through a glass, okay? And you don't see reality very well. This one would be, as an example, somebody that doesn't feel too good and it goes to his job and somebody says something bad about him and the person really gets hurt about it. Why do they get hurt? Because they are having this wrong idea that everything that the other person says is always bad towards them. You know? That would be an example of mental filter. Next, cognitive distortion, disqualifying the positive. And there's people that try to do certain things and they get discouraged. An example of this disqualifying the positive would be somebody that recently graduated, they go and apply for a job. The job is going really good. In fact, that person very soon becomes the employee of the month because of her performance. And things are going well, but then the economy hits. And the company has to cut personnel. And because she was one of the most recent hires, she ended up losing her job. And there she is, discouraged at home. She doesn't want to go out and find another job. And then a friend of hers comes and visits with her and tells her, hey, what are you doing here at home? You're a good worker. You should be out applying for a job. And what does she say? You know, I'm no good. The company cut me off. That means that I'm no good. Is that really true? Disqualifying the positive. You don't see the positive things, but rather just focus on the negative aspects. And as Hannah Moore says, obstacles are those frightful things you see when you take your eyes off your goal. And it's very true. Don't take your eyes off your goal. Next cognitive distortion is the mind reading. Very common cognitive distortion. In this one, you think that you know what the other person thinks before you haven't even asked them. And the interesting thing is that the person thinks those thoughts before they haven't even asked him, and it usually is people that they don't even know. Okay? You sit down in the bus and you see across the aisle, oh no, that person is not nice, I'm not even going to say anything. How do you know that? Have you talked to him? Have you ever met him? You never talked to him, you know. So only God Almighty can read the minds of other people. We as humans don't have that ability. And many times we get into trouble because of that. Another example, you're walking down the street and you see a dear friend of yours. But that person is distracted, they don't see you, and they pass along with you without saying hi. What do you say? I know, she's really mad now. How do you know that? Did you ask her? No. See, you start thinking that you know everything before it happened. And statistics show that you have only 1 in 4 chances that you're going to be right with strangers or those you don't know. So, which one would have more mind reading? Women or men? Which one do you think? They are actually equal. They don't have the ability to read other minds, you know. Are you guys paying attention? Didn't I just told you that? In fact, the statistic says that it's 4 out of 5 chances that you're going to be right in those that are very close to you. Still, there is some part that you are not going to get. Another common cognitive distortion, and that is called jumping to conclusions. In fact, I heard a training that says that this is the only type of exercise Americans do on a regular basis. You know? And in this one is a sub of mind reading. As Stephen Wright says, a conclusion is what you come to when you're tired of thinking about something. So beware of jumping to conclusions. Then the next cognitive distortion is the fortune teller error. In this one, you think what the future holds before the future comes. And let me tell you, this is a very important source of stress and anxiety in people. See? Here you are at the beginning of the month, and you cannot even sleep because you think that next month you're not going to be able to pay the rent. Next month has not come. The month hasn't developed. You don't know if you're going to find a job or if there's going to be something or somewhere where some resources can come. So don't do this type of cognitive distortion. Whenever you catch yourself getting worried about something that is going to happen in the future, remind yourself that the future has not come yet. And this is something very important. We need to learn to live on the today. Some people like to live in the past. Some people like to live in the future. Learn to close those doors of the past and of the future, and dedicate yourself of living the today. Because if not, today is going to pass and you're going to miss all the blessings that will come. Somebody that says, I will never be able to overcome this problem. Cognitive distortion. And then we have magnification and minimization. In this one, the problems become bigger than they are, or you start ignoring things and not putting the real emphasis on them. What would be a good example of this? Your phone rings, and it is your aunt that you haven't heard from her in a while. And then you start making a scandal about it. Oh, she's probably calling me because my uncle probably died, you know. Wait a minute, you haven't even answered the phone. How do you know that? See, you magnify things. You magnify things without the need of facing the problem. So beware of that. That don't escalate things bigger than they should be. And many people have the disease of I can't stand this. They themselves tell themselves that they cannot stand it. Yet, how do they know? No. There's even a song that we like to teach during our depression recovery program that goes something like this. I don't like it, I don't like it, it's okay, it's okay. I can stand it anyhow, I can stand it anyhow, I'm alright, I'm alright. And you know, we use this little song during our depression recovery residential program. And one time we had this guest, very problematic guest, very severely depressed. And whenever somebody comes to our program, they have to pay the full amount, and we tell them, you won't get any refund if you leave. So in that way, the person is motivated to finish the whole program. The first few days are rough because they're getting used to the diet and the new program, etc., etc. So this person got discouraged after a couple of days, and she said, you know, forget it. I'm not staying here, I'm quitting. So she went to her room, she packed her bags, and as she was walking out in direction to her car, she saw that there was an exercise bicycle. So she thought to herself, you know, I paid quite a bit to come to this program. I pay also to make some exercise, so I'd rather do some exercise before leaving. You know, this was expensive. I better use my time wisely. So she got in the bike and she started biking, and then suddenly that little song came to her mind. I don't like it, I don't. And she started analyzing what she was singing. And guess what? She realized that she was having a cognitive distortion moment at the time. So she went ahead, stopped the bicycle riding, took her bags, went back to her room, unpacked, and she stayed with us at the end. And that's when she told us this story. Do you see how we can sometimes make problems worse than what they really are? So, a good saying is the serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know dead different. There is a lot of wisdom in this saying. And you know, one of the things that people with this type of distortion have is the issue of pride. Okay? And in a book called What Your Counselor Never Told You, excellent book by the way, anybody that is dealing with mental issues, I would highly suggest you get that book. The author is called William Baptist. And in that book, he deals with the issue of pride. And this is the definition that they use. They said, the author says that somebody has an issue with pride if they have the following characteristics. Trying to be noticed, craving attention, itching for compliments, needing to be important, detesting the idea of being submissive, loathing the idea of admitting to wrongdoing, strongly opinionated, being argumentative, demanding your way, wanting control of others, flaunting your individual rights, refusing advice, being critical, yet resenting criticism, being oversensitive, and thinking you have excellences that you don't have. And if you have this pride issue, I can assure you, you are setting up for a major hurt in your life. Because once reality comes back, then major issues are there. And that's why it's important to identify this distortion, and anytime it comes back, you need to make the effort to stop it. Next cognitive distortion, we have the emotional reasoning. In the emotional reasoning, you start reasoning and justifying your emotions. For example, people that say, I don't feel like changing anything right now, so I won't. I don't feel like going to my job this morning, so I won't. So procrastination and laziness are this type of things that happens when somebody has this cognitive distortion. Another cognitive distortion is the mislabeling. Having irrational definitions. In this one, you start putting labels on people and on yourself. Okay? For example, somebody that says, oh, I'm so dumb. What happens when the person repeats that over and over and over? They end up believing the label. Somebody that is trying to lose weight and comes to our program, we teach how there are certain things that are not good for them if they want to lose weight, such as ice cream. Many people have this issue with the ice cream issue. Lots of fat and sugar in ice cream. So we teach people not to use this if their objective is to lose weight. We had one participant, she understood that and she made the commitment, and sure enough, she stopped taking ice cream and her weight started going down. But one day she was alone and she saw that there was a big container of ice cream in her fridge. So, noticing again there was nobody at home, she goes to the freezer, opens the freezer, gets the container, and with a spoon, she just takes a bite. And she says to herself, you know what? I am just a pig. Why did I do that? And she went ahead and ate the whole thing. Mistake. See? You put the wrong label on yourself. Another example of this would be prejudice. In prejudice, you put the wrong label on people. See? And you start seeing the wrong things. And then you start to try to justify your behavior. See, those persons are like that and like that and like that. Or certain ethnic groups, you start classifying in this way or the other. So, this cognitive behavioral therapy is not something new. Are you aware that all the way from the time that the Bible was written, cognitive behavioral therapy was being talking about? For example, in the New Testament it says, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, if there be any virtue, and if there be any praise, what? Think of these things. This is an excellent guideline for you to have. Ask that question next time the thoughts are circulating in your head. Use this guideline. Is it true? If it's not true, discard it. Is it honest? Does it have good values? Does it help me to be a better person, or does it make me a worse person? Is it just or is it unfair? So, if there is any virtue, if there's any good thing in those thoughts, keep them. If not, you have the ability to reject these types of thoughts and to put something much better in their place. This is found in Philippians 4:8, in case you want to look for it. So, we need to understand that there are other aspects of emotional intelligence.